Hello, everyone. Thank you for those of you who are joining right now. We're going to wait a couple more minutes for people who are just joining us. But we're going to get started here soon, okay? So thank you for joining us. For those of you who are already joining us right now, if you'll notice in the chat box, there is a link to a PDF that details everything you could possibly need to know about our lovely panelists that we have here today. So we're going to go ahead and skip introductions once everybody's here and just dive right in. So if y'all want to look at that, you can right now, and then a member of our team will be emailing you after the fact, and we'll link that as well so you can see it after the fact when we're done with everything here. Yep, it's in the chat. I'll just keep sending it. So that way it's the topmost link in the chat. All right, I think we're going to go ahead and get started now. My name is Alex. I'm going to be moderating today's discussion under the theme Intersectional Environmentalism, a Youth-Led Movement. This is going to be a two-part mini-series. That's a part of our bigger webinar series that Solar One has been putting on since this summer. This first part is focused on Indigenous environmentalists. So every one of our lovely panelists today is of Indigenous heritage. Here at Solar One, we believe in the power of education. We feel that a lot of the world's problems can be remedied through education. Arguably, the easiest group of society to educate is our youth through the public school infrastructure. However, we also recognize that there are gaps, oversights, and other systemic issues with this system. Knowing this, Solar One cares to bridge the gap between the education our students are currently receiving and a holistic education. So we're going to be kind of focusing on three different things today. One of those being K through 12 green education. The second being how we involve youth in environmentalist conversations. And the third part, how we make the environmentalist movement intersectional. So we're going to go ahead and kick it off and throw it to Emmanuela, who is our panelist from Indonesia. Emmanuela, within the context of K through 12 green education, why should youth or people in general care about environmentalism, and how do we convey that to them?
Thank you, Alex. Before I answer the questions, I would like to say hi from the land of Borneo, from Kalimantan, Indonesia, and I would like to greet you all with the songs from my tribes. Andre arai ate takam katuluni daya takam tau panalu. Sama penalu matakam katulu. It is said like with a grateful heart. I would like to greet all of you here, and thank you, Alex, for the opportunity and also for the questions. You know, like for me, when I talk about this youth movement, youth thing, sometimes I feel so old. Yeah, I'm 26, 28 right now, and I feel like, okay, should I still talk about the youth movement, the green movement, you know, like with youth, all this youth thing about environmentalism and so on. But you know, while I'm here speaking to you from Kalimantan, yeah, a lot of things happening here, a lot of things happening in this land, you know. And when I said happening, it's not really something that I like, you know, like a lot of environmental destructions. I'm not sure whether you ever heard about Borneo, but Borneo is the third biggest island in the world, and it has like one of the oldest rainforests in the world. But what's happening right now around me, the place where I grew up, yeah, where I was born and grew up, like living my life all of these years, like 28 years, all the things that I saw in the past, like green forests, beautiful landscape, all is almost gone. So when I talk about key to green educations, I'm thinking about how can I understand this land completely, not only as a knowledge, but as a connections, as a part of my life. I think this is very important for us to understand. And here, when we talk about indigenous community in Kalimantan, we are from the Dayak community. Uh, uh, we are the first people of the land, but there are also so many other tribes, and also like people that coming from outside Kalimantan, from different part of Indonesia, coming through this land to live, to study, and to work, right? And uh, with the situations where the Kalimantan is one of the biggest natural resources, for Indonesian government, I feel there is an urgency for the young people, especially those who live, who study in Kalimantan, whether they are a Dayak or not, to understand the importance of this land, to understand the importance to keep the forests of Kalimantan. And I mentioned about the distractions, like in the beginning. For you, sometimes, like here, I'm talking in the context of Indonesia, they feel like talking about green education, talking about activism, talking about being an environmentalist is such a high thing to talk about. It's like far away from our hands. It's like not easy to reach. Like that's only the conversations of an NGO, a green NGO or green parties, right? But when we talk about protecting the forest and protecting the land, and we understand the importance of the forest and the land to us, we no longer limit ourselves into this conversation. We no longer only talk about this as a subject, but we talk about that as the conversations in our daily life. That's what we do as an indigenous persons of Kalimantan. And I bring this into the conversations in our community. When we say like, okay, students, why the forest is important, it's no more like such an like formal things to do, but like you really need to understand, because you live here, because that's the part of your life, not only a knowledge. And I really believe that youth plays very important role right now, um, in terms of protecting our planet. Our ancestors told this: God only created the earth once. We have to keep it because that's a gift. So our ancestors passed us these wisdoms about the land, about the rivers, about the forests, about how to live in harmony with the natures, and how actually we are the stewards of this earth, of this planet. And we as a generations that accept these wisdoms from our ancestors, we have this responsibility to pass it into the next generation.
Yeah,
because
that's a beautiful note to end on. I don't mean to cut you off,
yeah, sure.
but that's a great place to segue into our next question. And I want to direct it at Sareya because I know she's really involved with K through 12 education and early education. So I feel like this is a question right up her alley. Sareya, what is green education? What does it mean to you? What does it mean within the context of Indigenous people? And what does it mean within the context of the greater world?
Okay, hi. For me, green education as an Indigenous person from America is looking at the very beginnings of America, like, when Columbus sailed the ocean blue or whatever, and he first came here. Because it's important to recognize there weren't things like pigs or horses or, just different, like alcohol here. Those things were never here. Those were not in part of the environment that was the United States before it was, the United States. And it's important to look at those things and notice all the changes throughout our history as people that live in America. if we don't look at those things, then there's no hoping to really change it or to push for a certain type of change. Sure, we can say that we really care about the earth and we want things to change. We can always say that, but we need to look at like Indigenous peoples for how they think that we should do, how we should change things. We can't just rely on, more like, for lack of a better word, like white understandings of how things work. Because often it's been shown that it doesn't help. Like when you look at how history is so whitewashed, it doesn't necessarily help. Instead, it is just really, it pushes like neo-Nazism and stuff like that. And it's just not helpful. So we have to look at these past histories and talk to like those people from the past on how we fix things now. And in terms of green education for like children, it's important that we make it accessible for them. We can't be talking about the Industrial Revolution to little like kindergartners. We need to like explain it in their own words and ways that they can understand it. And yeah, that's all I'll say about that for now. Thank you.
Great, thank you for that, Sareya. If Nanieezh or Naelyn, if you have anything to add to that, please jump in now. Otherwise, we can go ahead and move on to our next question. No? Okay, great. So this is one that's open for anyone to jump in on. I'd just like to know, how was your individual educational experience growing up? As an Indigenous person, it likely differed from the average American or the average person throughout the globe. How do you think we can teach these values on a mass scale?
I could say something, I guess, a little bit for the question before. When we talk about, green education, I think that the best way to teach our young students, especially from K through 12, is by letting them go outside. How can we connect to nature when we're allowing them to sit at a desk for 8 hours a day, but as a young Indigenous youth, I had went both to school into the city and on the reservation. And so many people that are non-native don't understand that we're kind of generalized or stereotyped under to be this one category, but we're a diverse culture with over 500 federally recognized tribes. And that's not even including those that were extinct or state federally recognized, or those that are not recognized at all. And so we have to have that kind of understanding that Native youth are not one and the same. And so our educational system is different on the reservation compared to it is in the city. So you get two different types of natives, that a native who's went to boarding school, or a native who went to school on the reservation and what they're taught. And then on the other hand of that, you get a native student who lives in the city. And like, what was said before is that we're taught this white perspective, and that white perspective is the winner's perception. What we're teaching our young children today is trying to live this American dream. And talking about when colonizers or when settlers first came to the United States, but we were already here. So we're learning about the people who came to the other side, but for us, it's different. It's what we were taught through oral history from our grandparents to our great-grandparents to our ancestors, who are teaching the connection to the land, the songs, our language, and the creation story of how we were brought here on this earth for where we're from. So the aspects of what kids are learning are because they're not here. They're not from here. It's this perception of, oh, this is how history started. But history has started for us since time immemorial, since before the founding of this country, or, of the laws that are in the system of education that teaches us.
Thank you. That's great, Naelyn. Nanieezh, I think you wanted to jump in on that one as well.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. It's really cool to meet you guys. I'm Navajo Ngwichin, I'll just say that. My school and sorry, I have a dog that's barking. My school and my home school sort of life they're different. As an Indigenous person, you go to these public schools and they're very westernized ideas. It's a white people's history that we're taught. And we're only given like a month to learn about ourselves sometimes, even less. And so when I'm at home, my parents, my grandparents, uncles, aunties, they're always teaching me about my culture, my way of life, our values. And something that they tell me a lot is that the land, the water, and our bodies are all sacred. The caribou, the crows, the salmon, they're all our relatives, and we have to protect them. And that we all share the land that supports us to live vibrant lives and healthy lives as Indigenous people. And in return, we're the stewards of the land, and we should look after it. We have to give prayers instead of pollutions. We can't go around hurting Mother Earth when she provides so much for us. And so something that I wish was taught more in schools is just the beauty of life, I guess, and the more emotional value of that beauty. In Navajo, my mother's tongue, we always say, Sa'a hanai bekehoja, and we walk in beauty and balance. And that's something that I think that's a value that everyone should have. And it's a value that's in a lot of religions as well. It's like one of the cross sections where they can all hold hands, because there's truth in all religions. And so I think that's a value that we could bring into schooling. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, that was great. Thank you so much. So go ahead, Emmanuela.
Yeah, I think when we talk about what being tough in the school, like some the non-Indigenous person will say like, hey, we cannot relate with that, because we are not living that way, we are not living your culture or things. But when we talk about the protections of the environmental, everyone should relate with that. And the problem with the public systems, like in our country with the education system and all this curriculum, they leave out the Indigenous wisdom from the curriculum. And that's a problem, because Indigenous wisdom is the one that keep the forest and keep this earth, because Indigenous people has been doing that for 1,000 years. So I think even though you are non-Indigenous, you should relate in that way, right? And that's something that actually government should, like take attention seriously.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And that's, again, it's a great segue into what I wanted to ask you all next. It's clear to a lot of us, I mean, maybe not to everyone, that's why some people are here, we're learning today, but I think the hard part is not understanding that there's a gap, right? It's not so much understanding that there's something missing in our current system, but I think where people struggle is like, is understanding what they can do on a personal level, you know what I mean? Because we have this idea that, one person can't make a difference, and that the only way to change these things is to enact, federal policy in every country that, mandates, certain number or a certain amount of Indigenous curriculum. And without that, then we feel hopeless. So my question to you all is then, what can we do on an individual level? What can we do right now? The 132 people that are with us right now, what can we do to make sure that these values are being taught, whether it's in the home, whether it's in conversations with friends, however it's happening, what can we do?
I think that, like how you're talking about what your perspective, and how there has to be federal laws that kind of guide us, that's colonial thinking. All of that is embedded, and that's like the difference between I had this question asked yesterday, is you get these environmentalists who are non-native, and what's the difference between environmentalists who are native? I think that we need to stop combining. We need to start combining, and instead of putting us on one side and the other, but the only difference between that is that it's embedded in us, taught from when we're first born. My mother used to teach me, when you take your first breath as a native person, you're fighting for your life, especially in the United States, because we were supposed to be an extinct people. Other than that, from that point, when we're breathing, it is connecting our body and our soul and our spirit to what Yosin, which is the creator, has given us. And that's the blessing of life. And I think that once we start to acknowledge that on a personal level, acknowledge that I am here, I too make a difference in this life, whether it's small or big. The way I'm breathing or how I'm walking on this land, too many times, many people pass by the street or walking into a store and allow trash to stay on the ground. It's not, not hard enough to just go and pick it up and throw it away. I think that once we take ourselves and acknowledge that this colonial mindset, we always talk about colonizing and we need to decolonize, and they always make that under Native people, that we're trying to decolonize us from this Western way of thinking. However, non-natives need to decolonize just as much. Decolonization didn't come from the creation of the United States. It came from the other side of the world, because we're all indigenous in some way. And so I think once we start to really talk about that and you ask yourselves those kind of questions, but where do I come from? It gives you a connection to the land. And that's where the pinpoint in the beginning to the first steps of self-healing, and not just for you, but for the world.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much. Does anybody else want to jump in on that question? No? Okay, great. Thank you so much, Naelyn. So you were already learning so much. And thank you for correcting me in my colonial thinking, because I'm even though that I organized this whole thing, it doesn't mean I'm immune at all, and I'm learning just as much as everyone else who's attending today. So that being said, it starts with us, and I love that takeaway, that it starts with each individual person trying to find a connection to something. But taking that a step further, taking that beyond yourself, how do we as a society involve the youth in that, right? Because I feel like you all are talking about stories of your families teaching you these things, and that's great and that's beautiful, but how do non-Indigenous people who don't have that same knowledge, who don't have that same history and culture and that generational wisdom as Emmanuela and all of you have been discussing, how do we involve our own children? How do we involve the youth in our community?
Right. Well, when I'm talking like in this sentence, my ancestors told us, this is not something that I learned like in such a very young age. Actually, I will be honest with all of you guys. I just start my journey like when I was 17 years old. And before that, I wasted all of my life, like being drifted away in the modernism and all this technology and all this Western, lifestyle. All these things that I was taught, like by the society, the colonial things. So the thing is, even with indigenous person, with indigenous youth, also we have this challenge, because country put us in the border, put us in the box in their systems, which I will be honest to say, like it can easily make us drift us away from our root, and there are so many young people that being disconnected to their roots. And like even for me in my family, actually we're not like having like this very strong like generational teachings, no, but really that's a journey, and I experienced it myself, and what I'm doing right now here, we always put this highlight, emphasize it to the youth in our communities, whether they are indigenous or not, whether they are Dayak or from other tribes. We say like you have to have this connection, just like what Naelyn said, because the connection is what bring you back to your roots, right? And once you connect it with your root, reconnect it with your identity, that's how you can start a movement. And that's what we have been doing here, because it's really tough, and for us, there are so many people that ask me, they say like, hey, how can you be a proud and indigenous person, like or indigenous activist, but you are still very close with technology and all these modern things? Okay, some people assume me, if I want to be a strong indigenous, and then I have to live in the forest forever, which is totally wrong. So this is the wrong idea that so many people outside there do not understand. They adore the beauty of indigenous, but they do not understand how actually the indigenous community, especially youth, have this power to combine the technology, modern technology, and indigenous wisdom to be a powerful tool to fight for the rights of indigenous community, to fight to protect the forest and to preserve our culture. And yeah, connection is very important. And for us, what we have been doing is we use video, we use audio visual medium to reconnect this youth, with this land. We bring them into this conversation. We have this screening the films about our village, about our land, about our mothers, about our grandfathers, telling the such of folk stories. We watch that together and have discussion. So it's really, like the combination between the modern and indigenous wisdom. And because we are the youth, the lead at the front line, for the movement, and for the future, very important for us to understand this balance, not to leave our identity behind, but just make all things work for us for the sake of our community.
Thank you, Emmanuela. Anybody else on that, on how we involve youth in our environmental conversations, especially for those of us who don't have this generational ancestral wisdom?
I just want to jump in real quick. Sorry.
It's okay.
I was thinking about in terms of like younger kids, because obviously I've worked with younger kids before. I don't know if any of you've worked with younger kids, but they make it sound interesting. If you sing songs about it, they'll want to clean up so they can sing that song, or they'll want to do those different things as long as you make it fun. And when you really think about it, the earth is so incredible. Like, we have birds that fly. Like, there's all these different things that make up the earth that we don't even think about. Like water, we have to drink water so we live. Like, I know that's such like a basic, like, oh yeah, I have to drink water. I'm 78% of water. You're literally like 78% of water. That's crazy. Like, all of these other animals and things, they aren't like you. It's so interesting to learn about them. And as long as you make it sound interesting and you don't make it super boring, like how sometimes some teachers can make it a little boring. No disrespect to teachers though. But it's a matter of making kids want to learn about it. Because science can be super interesting. But just because sometimes it's not always explained in a super interesting way, kids don't really care. And things like recycling and how it works, and how like this bag is made from, old trash, or how Bernie Sanders had those mittens that were made from, different things. That stuff is so interesting. We just have to make it interesting for kids to want to learn about it, or make it more hands-on for them, because that's how they learn. Kids are so willing to learn and to listen to you talk as long as you make it sound interesting. And, teaching these type of indigenous values, to care about the earth, is something you can do in school, no problem. Like, someone just throws their water ball on the ground and leaves it. You can explain to them why that's not maybe a good idea. How it can affect animals if you just leave it there, or, what's going to happen to it over time if you just leave it there. These are all things that kids actually do find interesting, as long as you just make it interesting.
There's this organization called Teach for America, and what they do is that they get these first-time teachers who are going to teach on the reservation, and they kind of guide them to, because when you're in the educational system, you're kind of teaching in a linear fashion where, this is how it's going to be. We're going to go based on chapters and so forth. But when you're teaching a indigenous person, you kind of have to go through, it's like a circle, and like, I know it's a cliche of circle of life, but that's how Native people are able to understand certain kind of things. I think that, there's so many different ways, like how she said, combine, what we know today, modern, nize it, which is like technology, and then what we have that is green education and the environment, and put that together. So when you're in the city, I know that when I've been to New York, there's not really places for nature that's out there, because it's like a concrete city, same how it is in Washington, D.C. on the hill. So when you're in those kind of locations, ask, where are the people, that used to live here before. Teach your students that. Teach the students about where is the water that comes from the faucet. teach them about how buildings are created and where do they come from. Learning all those certain things, because we think that everything is so luxurious, that we're privileged people to see that we don't have to go and get our water from the river. And so having that kind of understanding and teaching your students how we get these resources is important, because then they'll not take it for granted, and they would understand that the lack of resources that we have today is important to try to sustain it and conserve it. So teaching our children how to connect with the land is by making them go outside, or by showing them, let's build, let's get a plant. Those certain kind of things are very important. And I know that for many of us who want to learn in this country, it's not all about that. I think that we really need to put that into our system, because if we don't, then the future of our children are not going to be protected. It's about the future, and that's the whole motive for Indigenous culture and tradition, is not protecting what's here and now, what's protecting our future generations, for our children's children. And people need to understand that, because we're in a time of urgency in this world.
Can I add too?
Yes, please do.
So I really like what Sareya and Naelyn said. Sorry if I didn't get your name right.
Sareya and Naelyn.
Sareya and Naelyn. And so to just sort of add to what they've been saying, bringing it back to the more maybe public school education aspects of it. I know when I learned history class in elementary school, and we talked about Christopher Columbus, I had some teachers who really sort of idolized him to my classmates, which was a little disturbing, very disturbing actually. And I had some teachers who gave the facts, but also gave emotions. So I'll try and explain that. When you just give the facts, especially in American schools, I've learned is just that the schools just give the facts. They give the facts, even if they're difficult facts, and there isn't really an emotional value to them. It feels monotoned, like we're supposed to memorize these facts for an upcoming test, and we don't really have to think too hard about it. And I think that's something that would help everyone in learning and being a part of the cause and being allies with Indigenous people, is really feeling everything, which can be really hard, especially at today's time when we have social media and there's so many tragedies that are happening all over the world, and it's just constantly being fed to us through media. It can be easy to like disassociate and to not want to really feel all of these intense emotions that you get when you hear news like this. And so if we practice being more feeling, which can kind of be an emotional roller coaster, especially
how exactly do we do that? I don't mean to derail your train of thought, but I know there's a lot of teachers with us right now who are kind of using this as a professional development.
Mm-hmm.
How do you practice this feeling? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I know it's abstract, but as best as you can, how do we kind of make that concrete, and what are some concrete things that people can physically do that will help them feel, as you say, and teach with feeling?
Yeah. So this is something that I'm still learning. I'm a 16-year-old, FYI. So
yeah, you're amazing, and we know this. All of the people here today are so young and so powerful already. So they're still learning too. But yes, absolutely, Nanieezh, whatever you have to say, we're gonna listen.
Okay, thank you. So I guess I'll start off with this. I struggle with mental issues or mental illness, and that's a roller coaster on its own, right? And I'm sure a lot of other people can relate to that since it's really common. And especially as in like adolescent 16-year-old girl, it's even more common. So when I am looking for motivation, we'll call feelings motivation right now. It comes from a lot of places. There's a lot of places that I try and look for it, which can be really difficult when you're trying to look for motivation and you don't feel like, and you don't want to feel it. So I turn to hobbies. I turn to my family. I practice being outside and being in nature where I can just take a deep breath. I read a lot of books, and I have conversations. I talk to my younger siblings. I have a physical connection with someone, and we talk about different subjects. And a lot of the times, well, right now, since we're in the middle of a pandemic, my younger siblings are doing homeschool as well. So sometimes my mom will task me with helping them with different lessons, since I'm the eldest sibling in the household. And when we're going over history, or when we're talking about a subject that should be emotional, I like to start off with a book. There's a few books. I can't remember the name of them, but I have them in my room somewhere. And it's a young people's history by, I'm forgetting his name. Maybe I'll add it in the chat after. But we like to read a chapter of that book. And the book is really, really well written. I'll put it in the chat. But it talks about the way that it's written is it gives you the facts, which is what American schools do. Hopefully most of the time. I've definitely had some history classes where they told me some native people were extinct, and I was like, oh, my friend's that. But we need to maybe even, it's a process. If you're teaching a non-Indigenous young elementary school or middle schooler, even if it's in middle school, that they have ancestors who came to a land and just murdered other people to take something like gold, that should be emotional. That shouldn't be a fact that you're given and you don't have any response to. And it's like, it needs to be a place, school needs to be a place where you can grieve comfortably, and then like sit with the facts that these happened and feel it all the way through, so that you can move on with your life, realize you are not your ancestors. You carry them with you, sure, but you are a different person. You are in a modern society, and you can make change that's positive, change that impacts other people. Yes, Howard Zinn, A Young People's History, whoever. You can make change. You can make change that's positive, and you can be a wonderful person. And you can see all the beauty in the world, and you can do so many amazing things with your life. And it doesn't have to be, maybe I'm getting a little sidetracked. Do you kind of get that when I say like you should learn your history? And
no,
then,
absolutely. We're
okay,
tracking.
yeah, okay, great. Sorry,
You're good. You're good.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Were you done with your thought, or did you have a couple more words to wrap up?
Well, I think I got most of it out, but
okay.
Yeah.
If it comes back to you, just jump right in, okay? Or just
Okay.
let me know somehow that you remember what you were on to. Anyways, no, I absolutely agree with you that, you know, we tend to have this kind of a sterilized version of everything. I don't know, of knowledge that is taught in schools. And I think it comes from the idea of like having to make everything so secular but it sacrifices a lot. And that's not to say that, you know, anybody needs to be pushing anybody else's, you know, religions or beliefs onto other people. Like there's definitely a way to combine the two. And I think that's what America specifically is like struggling with right now, is this kind of false dilemma of it's either or. It's either super religious or it's super secular, and there's no in between, and that's absolutely false. And I think that's pretty much what Nanieezh was trying to get at here. So moving forward from this idea of green education, I think we've had a lot of good discussion on this, and we'll circle back to it if we've got a little bit more time at the end. But moving towards the movement as a whole, environmentalism as a whole, and making it intersectional, making it so that everyone's voice is heard, making it so that way indigenous culture is part of it, right? Because I feel like right now we have these kind of two groupings. I think I don't remember who, forgive me, but one of you said that we've kind of separated it. I think it might have been Naelyn, that we kind of separated environmentalism and indigenous environmentalism, and that's not okay. Like white environmentalism and indigenous environmentalism and Black environmentalism and every kind of environmentalism needs to come together and coalesce into one big strong movement, and that's where we're really going to get a lot of big change. How do we do this? From your personal experiences, with whether it's with your community, organizations, or what have you, how have you felt like you've started to kind of bridge that gap and bring these kind of different sects of environmentalism together? Anyone can just jump out.
I can start that off. So my biggest fight that I've been fighting for since I was a little girl, I'm 21, and I think I started running for the Spirit of the Mountain Runners when I was 2 years old, and ever since then, I have been heavily a part of the fight. But it's because it's an intergenerational fight. For Native people, it's always passed down. And when we started fighting for the Oak Flat Fight, which is a sacred site to the Apache people and to other tribes here in Arizona, against a foreign mining company who wants to mine the largest copper ore in North America. When we talk about environmentalism, I think that when we first take those few steps, it should be about the location of where you come from. In a sense, to start off, where do I live, and what's happening here? What should I do to better, preserve what's left? Because when we're talking about climate change and we're talking about the environment, we're thinking of like it's so much further into the future. But we're so behind as human beings. It's urgent. We're in a crisis where we need to make action and change now and implement it in our lives before that chance is far gone. And I think so, in a mass scale, when we talk about what I was always taught from my grandfather, he had always told us and said, when we're fighting for these places, it's about the world. Nago Sun, which is the earth, Mother Earth, she can protect herself. She will live way beyond our lives, but it's humanity we're trying to protect. We're trying to protect the survival of human beings. And so that should be the essential, cornerstone, the foundation, is that the survival of humanity is by being active in environmentalism, no matter what color, no matter what class, and no matter what power. And so I would just urge people to first start off in your own location. And then if you live in the United States, there's countless of different reservations and sacred sites to Indigenous people that are being destroyed and desecrated. Look those fights up and start, getting involved. There's so many ways on the internet where you can get yourself involved. And this goes into that slacktivism. Go beyond that. Go beyond social media. Go beyond, what is on the keyboard, and make that stance into your life. And so I think that that's really important, is to get involved in these Indigenous fights, because we're welcoming people. I always invite people to come out to Oak Flat, support the Stronghold, because how can we make change if we separate ourselves from one another? And throughout history, we've never seen anything change until we started to unify. accept diversity, because we're all beautiful, we're all human beings. And so that needs to be our foundation.
Yeah. Okay, I will just jump in. I'm not sure if the pictures that I sent to Amy can be shown here. Yeah. Yeah, I sent several pictures. I think that's
we can include those. Sorry, Emmanuela. Yeah, so we're gonna include those in like a packet. Oh, never mind. Aim screen sharing. Okay, go ahead, Emmanuela.
Okay, while we're waiting for that, like I would like to address like these two things. First is when we talk about the climate crisis and climate action, climate justice, it feels like we're talking about something big, like, and sometimes we feel so overwhelmed with that, and like, hey, what can we do, like, is there anything that I can do that make any difference, right? But I just want to say, actually, like there are so many people that fight at the front line, and we should not give up, because we can choose whether we should be a victim, but like we have to stand as a hero. And this is what we are doing in Kalimantan. If you ever heard about the Kalimantan forest fires and haze in Indonesia, actually that's the worst thing that ever happened here, because it contribute more than 1 billion CO2 in 2015, and we are living here like in the heart of the haze, breathing in such poisonous air that can like just easily kill you, just in minutes, because of the lung failure. But and these fires already happen like for over 20 years. It's for 23 years. Every year we have this forest fire. In these situations we can say like, hey, we are here suffering, like we need people to help us. I don't think the screen sharing works, but that's okay. You can send it later. But I just want to say, like, we are here standing while we are breathing in such poisonous air and see our loved ones, our children, our elders die because of the lung failure, because of the haze, because of the deforestations that caused this massive forest fire, because all these companies that operate like palm oil and mining in Indonesia, in Kalimantan. We still stay strong and we try to bring the justice for Kalimantan, while we are wearing like 3 layers of the mask. And even I lost my voice like for 3 weeks in 2015 during that massive fire and haze. We still stand like outside the parliament office, like we are talking. We demand for the climate justice, we demand for the protections for our children and babies. Like the most important thing right now is to turn our ideas and concept about climate action, about climate justice into an action, because we already have so much conversation with that. We have all these summits, like UN summit, we have this conference, that conference, but what is the actions, right? And I would like to tell, like, the local communities are at the front line of this. While we are talking about how to reduce these emissions, carbon emissions, 1,000 people here in Kalimantan are dying because of these forest fires and haze. And it's not caused by the local government. It's not by the local communities, I mean, like, but it's caused because of the expansion, these massive expansions of the consumption of the palm oil that make people suffer. So when we talk about this intersectional environmentalism, like we need to understand in the bigger context. And I would like to show you that there are so many people that stand here, even though we can do this playing victim stories, oh, you steal our land, like you make us suffering, blah, 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 this thing. But no, we refuse to give up. And the second thing that I want to say is, there is this philosophy in the Dayak about Huma Betang. It's a long house. Like there are so many different rooms in one house, and each family lives in one room. And if one room being burned, catching the fire, it's impossible for the families in other rooms just silent and watching, and do nothing and say like, I hope you are okay, guys, because that's happened in your place. Naelyn mentions about how actually this is our global fight, our fight together. What's happening in Kalimantan, what's happening in Australia, this wildfire, and some indigenous rights violations in India, it's not only the problems that belong to one place or one country or one community. That's our fight together, because while here in Kalimantan burning, in Amazon burning, in California and Australia burning, we cannot just stay silent and say like, oh, that's what happened in other side of the world. It's not gonna happen here. No, but if this planet, which we call home, suffer in its part, you know, it will catch all of us in the fire and suffering. So that's why we need to work together and really actively engaging into finding ways how we can tackle this together. And about this selectivism, you know, like honestly, actually, we use a lot of social media campaign to raise awareness and also to put the pressure on the government. And of course, it's challenging. Of course, there's a plus minus of this, but you know, convert your idea into an action. Stop talking, just doing it right. And that's what I want to say.
Thank you, Emmanuela. Anybody else on environmentalism and how, as a movement around the globe, and how we can make it more intersectional?
I'll just add something real quick. So recently, well, for a long time and continuing, the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, which is one of my homelands. I'm Natsai Gwich'in, and we come from the tundra and the caribou, and it's been under constant attack from the government and many exploitive industries who are trying to get oil and different natural resources from that land, as in many, if not all, other indigenous lands, sacred places as well. There was a lease sale that was going to happen, that did happen on January 6th, this January. And we got 6 million letters signed to the government to put it on hold so that they wouldn't be able to sell this sacred land. And I did this with a few other people on TikTok, actually, where we got like a few videos to blow up on TikTok, and 6 million people signed the letter because we had some really large creators putting this information out and telling people that the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge is under attack. And the main thing about it was the polar bears, of course, not having, like, the ice would melt in the Arctic with this exploitation, because it affects everything around us, just like what Emmanuela has been saying, how we're all connected. And so I thought that that was really awesome, and that was a really cool way to get so many people from around the United States, since the letters could only be signed in the United States, to make change together and have it actually be effective, even through social media. And so I thought that was really amazing. I'm definitely gonna look into using TikTok more for that sort of stuff. But I wanted to share that too. So TikTok is a platform that seems to work pretty well.
That was a great example of like how we can involve youth, because I think a lot of times when there's like a generational difference in between the people that you're teaching or that you're trying to relate to an issue about, you think that you can't learn these things, or that you can't understand another generation's, I don't know, gimmicks or what have you. But you know, you have to put yourself in those shoes again, and remember that at one point in time you were 13, 14, 15, 16, you know, and you were these kids trying to learn about culture and current events and everything, and how overwhelming that can be. And you got to meet them where they are, and you got to use platforms like TikTok, and you have to take it upon yourself to understand what it's like to be a kid in this like modern age. Like, it's so different from what every other generation has experienced in the past. And so as educators or as activists, it's our job to take that extra step and learn these things that might seem silly to you, or might not seem like it can make a big difference. But as Nanieezh used this example, like it's a powerful platform, and there's plenty of other platforms and examples. This is just one, but yeah, this is super important. So, okay, we've gotten through most of our questions and we're almost out of time. So I do want to tackle some of the questions that we didn't get to from the audience. Naelyn earlier mentioned that there's a big difference between the type of education that's received on a reservation and off a reservation. Naelyn, if you want to come back in on that, or any one of you, if you have any insight or would like to share an experience of what it's like to receive an education on a reservation as opposed to in the city or outside of a reservation, and how we can kind of use your experiences and educate more people.
Yeah, so when you are teaching on the reservation, so you have to get at the idea of cultural values, cultural beliefs, and how are they taught, because each people are taught in a different way. And the understanding of reservation schools is that, one, you have to understand that reservations for Native people are, for some of them, for myself, Apache people, I'm Chiricahua Apache. The St. Carlos Apache tribe is the tribe I'm enrolled in. However, that's not my ancestral homeland. I was put here as a prisoner of war. I'm a product of that. And so you have to understand the kind of the history and the trauma that these, that Indigenous people have gone through, and to understand that. So when a teacher is coming onto this land, it's their, this is trusted land. And you get a lot of non-natives who think that people on the reservation are really just have their own land. We have our own land away from everyone. But no, we're trusted land under the federal government, as warded to the government still to this day. That's what the government tells us. And we have this idea of, where these reservations are like third world countries. So we coming from homes that are not just, we're like a homes of like 4 people, a mom, a dad, and their 2 kids, or whatever. You're coming in, these students come from homes from 11 people, 12 to 20 people. So this like example, this pandemic has caused a lot of harm to Native reservations because how it spreads. And these homes are infecting 20 people per home. So a lot of our loved ones are lost. And so on the out of the reservation, you get these non-natives who tell I used to get bullied all the time about, you're brown, so you stay over there where your people belong. So it's either, you're living in 2 different worlds, where you're family oriented and you're on the reservation, able to go outside and do all these sort of things. But in the city, you're secluded. Segregation still continues in social terms, and rather than, not in the system. But we have the system who is meant to break Native people. So for Indigenous issues, there's so many different layers, that we can go over, and it would take hours to discuss, like what can we really do. But I think that acceptance and, having the idea that people come from different cultural aspects or come from different homes, it's trying to really find that balance between the two. And I think that this is a great example to the first steps of wanting to learn and wanting to make a difference. But just like Emmanuela said, it's after that, once this webinar is over, what are we really going to do? We have to really make that action and keep that momentum going. I know it gets tiring, and we have those feelings, but we have to take self-care, and the self-care comes with taking care of the environment too. So for the end of my saying, it's just I really encourage people to make a stand, because this world's going to change no matter what. We can't be a bystander no more. And I believe in all of you to make a difference, not just us here, but each and every one of you on this panel.
Thank you so much, Naelyn. So I do want to ask 2 more questions. It is going to take us a little bit over time. So for those of you who need to get out of here, thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate you attending and having this difficult conversation with us today. Amy is going to be sending out an email to all of our attendees today with information on how to get in contact with each of these panelists. all of the organizations that they are involved with and how you guys can get involved as well as a link to the complete recording of this webinar. So thank you so much for those of you who need to get going. If you want to stick around, we are going to ask 2 more questions from the audience. So let me get into that. One that I thought was really good is someone said that most high school students experience like an existential crisis when they begin to understand really how complex and how big these issues are in the world, namely climate crisis. How have you personally dealt with this experience and dread, and what advice do you have for people to get through this and to cope? We'll take one answer from whoever wants to jump in.
I kind of feel like, oh, Emmanuela, do you want to go? I'll be really short, so you can go too. So I've been going through it a lot lately as a 16-year-older. The world's crazy. And I've kind of been going through it for a while, actually, because when I was younger, my parents are really into the movement. And I grew up with a lot of the facts and a lot of the emotions, and from a really young age, too. And so what I do to stay motivated is just like see the beauty in life and focus on the little things even. And all those little, there's a big goal, right? That we want to try and save the planet, protect Mother Earth. But we need to focus on the little steps that we make, because every step is a big step. Okay, Emmanuela, you go.
And then I almost forget what I'm going to say. Yeah. You know, I experienced it a lot, and you know, when this land is caught in the fire, like I see to my left and right side, all this forest was gone, and what left was only ashes, and I saw this fire blazing, you know, like burning in my home. So it's not an easy feeling. And then I heard about people that suffers about this injustice to the indigenous community. So I experienced it, actually, I have to admit, like quite a lot, you know, like it's like a mental breakdown, and it feels like, okay, this is too much, you know, like I cannot do this. Nothing's changed. Even when I talk to indigenous activists, like she said about over 30 years, she fights for the rights of indigenous community and for her land, and said like nothing changed, no winning. But you know, like what Nanieezh say, every small step is important. Like even the smallest can change the world, and every strike is important, because if we think like, okay, I don't need to do this because it's impossible, and maybe someone else is doing this, and then no one will do that, right? And I always say this also. This is the voices from the community. This is the voices from the ground. This is the voice from the indigenous people, you know, and here me and other panelists, we actually not talking from ourselves, but we represent our people, we represent our elders, we represent the wisdom from our tribe. So you know, like just when we talk about this, like 100 people attend this Zoom conference, right? And there's so many things they said, like, okay, we learn this. Okay, so one very first thing and very easy you can do, you can share it to someone else after this. You not only like keep it as a knowledge, but you share, become our echo. This is our voice, and you have to be our echo. That's very easy. And then once you engage with that, once you learn more about the issues, and once you know get connected into the land and into all these things, you will find your way. I believe that, because that's a journey. It's not a destination. Activism, environmentalism, it's not a destination, that's a journey. And that's how we start. Here is the best time to start. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Emmanuela. I think that was a great takeaway. And just one more thing for those of us who are still on here. There was a question about how organizations or companies who are interested in connecting with Indigenous youth and Indigenous communities, what networks can they, do you all recommend, or can they reach out to, so that way they can, yeah, go ahead. Nanieezh or Sareya, whoever was raising their hand.
I'll just put it in the comments, but Native Movement is a really good one, and Defend the Sacred. I'll put them in the comments.
Yeah, please do, and we'll include that in our email as well. If any of you have any last words, please wrap us up. Sareya, do you have anything to say? Were you raising your hand, or was I just imagining something?
Just like a small thing. I know earlier we talked about like how do we create more conversations like this. I think we have to make it we have to let it be uncomfortable. Obviously these are not things that we're used to learning, so it's always gonna be really uncomfortable to start learning about, but we have to allow that to happen. And I know there's this huge, like, I don't want to say cancel culture, but in a way it is also that we don't really give people the opportunity to learn because we just, I don't know, people get so scared to ask questions because they're worried it might come out wrong, or, you know, they're worried that they're going to get judged for not knowing the answer. But sometimes people just don't know. Like we've been talking about this whole time, they've never been taught this kind of stuff. They never really knew the true history of our Indigenous peoples or anything like that. So how can we expect them to know what type of questions to ask? We have to accept them as they come, because if we don't, then they're not going to want to learn, and they're not going to encourage other people to learn too. And I know for me, how I have helped others learn and helped myself learn is through like poetry. I know it's not super like a sciencey thing, but it's a really good way to learn. I was the poet laureate for my area for a while, and I have this poem that's basically about Indigenous peoples, and a teacher asked me one time if he could have the poem to read to his class while they were learning about Native people. And to be honest, I was really worried because I was like, oh my God, what if he's gonna like roast me in his class and be like, actually, she's completely wrong because, but that didn't happen. He let me come to one of the classes, and basically they didn't know that I was there. They had no idea. But they're talking about Indigenous history, and obviously in a lot of books it's like, oh, Indigenous peoples are a thing of the past, they lost, we won, kind of thing. But then he read this poem, and they had a really good discussion about how Indigenous people are still here today and how we're underrepresented within things like media and stuff like that, and just in different fields such as history or in science and stuff. And you know, all these different things, even if they're not like super I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, so I'll just keep talking. Even though they're not super normalized, it's really good to just start the conversation, because then they want to learn more. And I am so appreciative of what everyone said, because I feel like I learn new things. And you know, it's just a learning process. Like someone had mentioned, it's a journey. It's not like you're just going to get there someday. It's a long journey, and it's going to be hard, but I believe in all of you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to all of our panelists. Unfortunately, we are out of time. We are over time. But thank you so much for everyone who came. Thank you to our panelists. They're so insightful, so inspiring, so amazing. If you want to learn more about them, please look out for our email that we will be sending with all of the links that were discussed in our conversation, and more contact information, all of that good stuff. Just to wrap everything up, you know, Indigenous leaders have for so long been silenced, and have been silently at the forefront of this movement. And so it just makes me so happy that this is the kind of conversation that we can have. And it's mainly through increased emphasis on and dedication to green education that we encourage the rest of the nation and the world to feel as passionately about these causes as myself and all of these panelists here do. It is for this reason that implementing green education in our public system is so crucial to developing sustainable communities, which we can look at issues from an intersectional perspective and solve the world's environmental issues. Thank you again for joining us. Look out for our email. Follow us on Instagram for more content, reminders, and upcoming events. And please, a round of applause for our panelists.
Thank you, Masi
so much, ladies.
Thank you. Yeah, sure.
Sure, thank you all.